This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Recency bias in the NFL is so crazy because 3 games takes 3 weeks to play in the NFL, right? Where if you put together 3 games at the end of the season in basketball, nobody's really going to care because you're really talking about 1 week of games. In the NFL, if you put together 4 good games, you're talking about a month of good play, even though in reality, it's just 4 games. And also, since the offseason is so long, we take the end of the regular season so much more serious, or not just more serious, but we talk about it so much longer since the offseason is so long that it creates this giant impact. And sometimes that can go right. Sometimes that can go wrong. A lot of the times I think it goes the opposite way. But how many guys in the NFL have we thought were done because they had a couple of bad games at the end of the year? And vice versa. How many guys have we thought were going to get it together because they had a couple of good games at the end of the year, right? Recency bias kicks our ass at this point of the season. So I want to try to get past that and talk about some Browns that I think are going to be good for statistical reasons and not just because they put together a few good games, because we have been here with plenty of players who put it together at the end of the season who didn't show anything at the start of the next season, right? It's kind of a coincidence that they happen to play these good games at the end of the year or flash at the end of the year. But let's talk about some guys I think truly have good fundamentals to become good players because of the situation that they're going to be in this next year, or things that won't be there for them that were there for them last year that kind of inhibited them. First guy I'm going to talk about is Elijah Moore. The more I look at this, and no pun intended, the more I think he is primed to have a breakout with the Cleveland Browns. Now, why is this? I know it's easy to point at quarterback play. That's the go-to when we talk about Elijah Moore's lack of statistical dominance. But it's so true. Like, more true than it is with anybody else. Like, I would love to see Elijah Moore's Odell Beckham tape of him being open and not getting the ball, because every single number indicates that this dude consistently gets open, consistently gets in position to catch a football, and he consistently gets footballs he can't catch. Now, again, Zach Wilson might be the worst quarterback in the NFL. I don't even think that's a debate at this point. So I don't think a lot of people are going to be pushing back on that idea, because he's had horrible quarterback play. And we've seen what his numbers look like when he just didn't have Zach Wilson throwing him the ball, when he had somebody else. And it's not even like a superstar. It's like Joe Flacco and Mike White throwing him the ball. The numbers were drastically different. But also, you look at this, right? His receiving grades. He doesn't have a low drop grade, which means Pro Football Focus, and this is one of them things you can trust. Pro Football Focus tracks how often does a ball touch a wide receiver's hands and they don't catch it. And if they have a low grade here, so if he was like 35 drop grade, that would tell you that he drops his ball a lot. If you have a higher grade, so he has 72-81, it tells you that he catches most of the things that hit his hands. He's not a drop. He doesn't have bad hands. So that's not why he doesn't have production. You look at the targets, and 11 targets, deep 20 plus this year, 25, 23 behind the line of scrimmage. That's not super crazy, but if we go back to his rookie year, he had a decent amount of targets. If we go back to his rookie year, where he has almost a good amount of targets there, right? The same issues are there, where he doesn't have the production. And again, you have to ask, well, why is that? Now, you could ask the question also, is his high drop percentage? Well, is his high drop grade, so he doesn't drop the ball a lot, partly to do with the fact that he doesn't get a lot of footballs that he could touch because the quarterback play has been so awful behind him? That is a legitimate question that has to be answered, and we'll answer that question in preseason, regular season, and all that with Elijah Moore. But if that's not his problem, then he's going to be really good because, again, the receiving grades are off the charts with him. 88.4 deep plus 20 grade, 94 plus 3.3 medium grade, which that's what Deshaun Watson loves to hit. And then the short grade's pretty good there. He's not a behind the line of scrimmage guy, but he only got 3 targets there last year. Again, he seems to be dominant in that deep intermediate part of the field. And if he can do that consistently in this offense with Deshaun Watson at quarterback, doing what Deshaun Watson is comfortable with, this is going to be somebody who eats. Now, there's been a question of what position does he play as a wide receiver? Is he going to be a slot? Is he going to be a wide out, like wide X receiver or something like that? And I think he will be an X or a Z receiver and not a slot. The reason I think that is I don't think that's the best way to use him. He's good on deep routes. He's good on intermediate routes. You're going to want him on the outside boundary. What you want him to do is be able to go, like the slot receiver is not necessarily going to be able to get downfield a lot. I think that's more of a role for Amari Cooper or somebody else in this offense, maybe even a little DPJ if things open up like that. I think you want a little bit of a bigger body in that role with Deshaun Watson at quarterback, and you want somebody who can improvise with him in that role too. And I think Elijah Moore is probably going to be more useful for this team as a X wide receiver, and then you can move Amari Cooper and have more of his snaps come from the slot. Now, again, whenever we talk about corner or wide receiver and moving somebody to the slot, this is assumption that like 100% of their snaps are going to happen at the slot or 100% of their snaps are going to happen at X. It's not the case. He's going to take a lot of snaps everywhere. He's probably going to be a 310, 100 snap guy. So he's going to have 300 at wide and then 100 at slot and 100 on the oppo wide side. Like that's probably what it's going to look like with him. And the same thing for any corner that we talk about moving out the slot. Like wide receivers and corners are fluid. And you can move them around, move them in and out of games a lot. And I think we forget that when we talk about the depth chart. But Elijah Moore, I think he's going to be really good this year. The next player I think is going to take and have a big year is Jordan Atkins. Now, you talk about recency bias. He had his best game of his career in his last game, right? 6 targets, 4 receptions, 70 yards, 2 touchdowns, and that's great. But what I do like about Jordan Akins is the receiving potential of him. He's 6'4", 243. This team is lacking big bodies in the red zone. How many times have I complained about this over the years, right? We are lacking big bodies in the red zone. This team does a good job getting up and down the field, but when we get to red zone scoring and teams shut down Nick Chubb in that 5-yard area because it's just so hard to run the ball in that space, we don't really have a ton of options that can break a defense in that short span because size kills in that area of the field. Jordan Akins is a pretty good bet on the solution for that problem because, of course, David Njoku is going to be an issue, but when David Njoku oftentimes is the only receiver out on the field that is an actual threat over 6'2", it's obvious where the defense is going to pay most of their attention to, and it doesn't help that he plays tight end, and he's not necessarily a split him out wide tight end. He's a guy who could do a lot of damage as a receiver from the middle of the field, which happens to be a lot easier to cover in the red zone because you already have 3 players in close proximity to where he's going to be in most red zone defenses. So you can't really use David Njoku the way you want to, and if you notice, most of his touchdowns come from him either like extending a play in the red zone and finding a way to get to a pylon or him catching a ball in the middle of the field at the seam. That's usually where David does his money. Jordan Akins, on the other hand, is more of a split them out wide tight end. So he's going to be able to be used in a lot of red zone packages. I think he's going to be a better run blocker than people assume. Yes, he's been terrible the last couple of years as a run blocker, but I also think that he has shown some potential as a run blocker. You look at his first year in Houston, he actually had decent run blocking grades. So I think that Jordan Akins is going to be somebody who, again, he's going to be used in a role. I'm not saying 1,000 yards for Jordan Atkins, but I am saying a pretty successful second tight end year for him. And I think that role is carved out nicely for Jordan Akins. My bad. I keep saying Atkins. It's Akins. It's Jordan Akins, not Atkins. It looks like Atkins is Akins, but that's how that's going to go for him. Another player that I'm excited for this year is Greg Newsom, right? It seems like everybody done forgot about Greg. The people want Greg traded, this and that. It seems like there's a portion of the fan base dedicated to pissing off Greg Newsom at all costs. I don't understand it. He's a decent player. Why would we do this? And it's not like we don't understand why Greg Newsom struggled last year. And I wouldn't even say he struggled. He was just not elite last year, right? It's because they had him play a bunch of slot. And I say this all the time. The NFL proves me right on this all the time. The slot corner position is closer to linebacker than it is corner. So what you have is a position where you need to put somebody who's under 200 pounds to play linebacker in the NFL. Nobody who's capable of playing outside corner at a high level is doing that. Hell, Greedy Williams, who isn't even that capable of playing outside corner at a high level, is not doing that. That is not a job for anybody. That is a job that requires a different mindset than what it takes to be a great boundary corner. Great boundary corners are not going to be great slot corners. Very rarely is that ever the case. Like maybe one or two guys in the league could do it, but it's not the case. What it takes to be a great boundary corner is not at all similar to what it takes to be a great slot corner. There is a reason why slot corners, the best ones in the NFL, are routinely late to undrafted free agents. It's because the criteria in which it takes to be a slot corner is simply different than what everybody else looks for other corners. So you're not looking for super fluid hips. You're looking for a very physical guy. A guy who likes contact, a guy who embraces the physical role. Honestly, you're looking for more or less small linebackers from corners than you are actual corners at that position. You look at a guy like Mike Hilton. Mike Hilton is a terrible cover corner. Everybody knows this. It doesn't matter because he plays slot. He's not asked to cover all that much. The slot corner position is much different. There was this fallacy going around that I think can only exist when people kind of get too caught up in analytics that they don't realize what they're doing. And the fallacy was, well, the slot corner is just as impactful as the other two corner positions, so you should put a good corner there. That works on paper. Where that breaks down is on the football field because, again, the slot corner position says slot corner, so you think, oh, it's similar criteria to corner. It's a linebacking position, basically. It's a position for a super undersized linebacker, not another corner. So most of the people suggest should play the slot shouldn't. Point blank, period. Greg Newsom should have never been in there. I said this all offseason last year. It's still true. He should have never been in that slot. I think once he gets out the slot, he gets back to boundary. He'll make the steps that he needs to make to be the player that we know he could become. And I think he'll be a Pro Bowler if he gets out the slot. Point blank, period, with him. Another player is Ogbonnia Okoro. I like this dude a lot, man. He was a really highly graded player last year. I think he's going to make some steps this year. You look at his numbers, and I think he could be helped by just having some help. He did a lot better in LA when he had more help on the defensive line on that Super Bowl Rams team. I think it'll be a similar case this year. If he has the help, if he's next to Miles, less attention, more success for him. And then JOK is another one. He had a lot going on with his family last year. Also, you look at his grade drop. I mean, it's right when Anthony Walker went down and all the communication problems went down. I think he was a victim of everybody just kind of doing whatever they wanted. And JOK is one of the guys who are qualified to do and go off script. But when everybody's going off script, nobody's going to be right. And I think he was a victim of that. Also had a lot of stuff going on off the field. I think he'll be a much better player this year. I think JOK will be... I think he's primed to have his best year of his career this season. That's my thoughts on the players I think are going to be good this year. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have a good